Hey guys, and welcome to the first day of autumn. It's September 1st, which means that fall has officially begun, and I don't care that it's still like 90 degrees outside. So, in honor of August being over, we are going to talk about all the books that I read in August this month, which is my average, 10. So I read 10 books this month, and some of them I loved, and some of them I hated. So, let's talk about it. We are going to go in order, so I'm going to go in what I read first in the beginning of August until the last book that I read. So the first book that I read, I'm going to talk about the first two, because I read the last two books in the City of Bones series. So these are City of Lost Souls and City of Heavenly Fire, which I was very excited to put these on my bookshelf and finally have the completed art, because they make such a pretty image. But reading the Mortal Instruments, they have a couple different series by Cassandra Clare that's like in the same universe. They're all like about the Shadowhunter world. But I have mixed emotions about this series. Part of it I loved, and this is just like a YA series. So essentially what it is, it's like a group of people who hunt demons. So they're Shadowhunters, and they have like special abilities, and there's things like vampires and werewolves and all of the mythical creatures that exist, fairies. And it's kind of like an ongoing war, so there's like similar to Harry Potter, where there's like someone trying to take over because they like think they have like a better idea than the people who are actually running the world. So that's essentially what's going on throughout the whole entire series. There's a lot of really weird stuff that happens in this book. I don't want to ruin anything, but like, for anyone who does want to read it, I know this is probably commonly read. It's an older series, and I know they made a couple like movies and TV shows, but it was a roller coaster. And poor what's his name, Simon, he's like the main character. It's her best friend. He goes through a rough time through this series. They like put him through the ringer. So honestly, like the whole series, I'm gonna give maybe like a 3. I'd give it a 3 because it's kind of unsatisfying. Like every time you think that something's gonna happen, it like is like, oh, not yet, and then it's like, okay, the last 2 pages, it happened, but you don't get to really enjoy it because it's over now. So that's really how I felt. I preferred the last book, Heavenly Fire. My voice doesn't even want to talk about the books anymore. I preferred City of Heavenly Fire more than I did Lost Souls. And honestly, this whole series blurred together so much that I don't even really remember everything that happened separate of the different books. But I just really liked the last one because it was finally over. And I was gonna read the next series, so she has more series, like I said, and I was gonna read them, but now like I didn't, obviously, right after these. I needed a break. If you guys have read them, let me know. Is it worth it? Because I don't know. I don't know if I want to get sucked back into this world. So, thank you, Cassandra Clare, for writing this roller coaster of a series. But I don't know if I could ever pick them up again. It's not like a series you could read multiple times, at least in my opinion. So let's get on to the next one. So after I finished the Shadowhunter series, I was like, I need a break from fantasy books. Like, that was just too much. So the next book I read was, actually, let me check my list. I did read a couple books on my Kindle too, so they'll be on there too. I just won't have a physical copy of them. So okay, yeah. The next book I read is It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. I know a lot of people have mixed emotions about Colleen Hoover and her books. I've read a couple of them, so I've read this, and I think the other one's called Reminders of Him, which I really did like. I liked Reminders of Him a lot. It Ends With Us, I liked it, but at the same time there's aspects of it that I wished were like different, if that makes sense. So I know that she kind of wrote this, I believe, I could be wrong. I think I read this in the acknowledgments or the note from the author, that something similar to this, was her life, like her parents or something like that is what she kind of like based the book off of. So I liked that it was personal, like you could tell, like that it was personal in my opinion. I wasn't a huge fan of the way it ended. Like, it just seemed like, and I obviously don't want to speak on, like, every, like, person of abuse or anything like that. It just seemed like it ended too, like, prettily. Like, it was like everything was tied up in, like, a fancy little knot at the end, and I just feel like that's not, like, really how it would go. Like, I don't think that, just feel like there would be more. I feel like it just doesn't end that way. But I could be wrong, you know, like, everyone's different, and it's just a fictional story, obviously. But I did enjoy it. I liked it while I read it. I read it in one night, actually. So I sat down and I started reading it, and I read it in like 4 hours because I was like, I was really into the story while I was reading it. So, if anything, it was a very quick and easy read. And, well, obviously not easy because, like, there's some heavy topics in this. So, this book deals with, essentially, it's a girl, and she's going through an abusive relationship. Her, like, dad had just died, and her parents also had, like, an abusive relationship. So, that's kind of, like, the gist. And it's kind of, like, written in two perspectives, which I really like, because it's talking about, like, her one true love, which is the person that she met when she was younger, and then the guy she's with in the book. So I liked seeing the different perspectives, going back and forth between, like, her as a young girl versus her as an adult, and, like, the way that it always, like, related back to, like, what was going on in the present time. So it is really well written. Honestly, just for the way that it is written, I totally would give it probably, like, a 4, 3.5, 4-ish, because I just really liked the flow of it. Like, it had a really good flow. The story was a little, I don't know, I probably would have changed some things, but that's just my opinion. Okay. Good book. Thanks, Colleen Hoover. And I don't know, are any of her other books worth reading? I know that there's a lot of them that people are, like, not a huge fan of Colleen Hoover because of them. So I'm intrigued to know if she has any other good books, or if you've read It Ends With Us, and, like, if you have an opinion on how it ended compared to, like, what I thought. But I kept my romance train going, and I read Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This book, absolutely amazing. I love Emily Henry. So basically what it is a girl, and she is a, like a super strong, independent woman, like, doesn't need anyone, and she's a book publisher. And she goes on a vacation with her sister, and they go to this little tiny town, like, and they originally live in New York City, so it's definitely a big change from the setting that they're in. So they go to this little tiny town, and they're staying there for, like, I can't remember how long it is, like 3 months or something like that. And she ends up meeting a guy who worked in New York City with her, which was, like, her arch enemy. So you get to, like, kind of see, like, the perspective of her and her sister, and, like, trying to kind of adapt to this, like, life of not being in New York City, because that's kind of, like, she pretty much thrives in New York. Like, that's, like, her thing. She likes the city life. She struggles to be in this, like, small town. And then also the guy interest, who is originally from New York too. So I definitely liked that, and I liked seeing all the different relationships, and her, like, story and complexity of the main character was absolutely beautiful. I loved her, and it was, like, these little quirks that she had, and then you'd find out later, like, oh, that makes sense. This is why she's doing that, and this is why she feels this. And her sister is hilarious. I think this is one of the first books that I've read that I've, like, literally laughed out loud, like, multiple times while I was reading this, because her sister is so funny. And honestly, she is too. Like, it's really good. Like, it's lighthearted, but it also has, like, some stronger topics in it as well. And it's, like, I don't know, just funny. It's really funny and sweet and cute, and, like, everything you would want in a good rom-com book, with also, like, the depth. Like, usually, like, you read a rom-com and it's like, okay, it's a rom-com. But, like, this, like, had really good depth in it. So I definitely recommend this. I love all of Emily Henry's books. I actually just picked up, what is it? People We Meet on Vacation. And I still haven't read it because I'm, like, back off the, like, literary fiction type romance books. But I really look forward to reading it. I don't think it can compare to this one because this one is just absolutely amazing. And I know she's coming out with a new one. I don't know when it's being released, but I'm definitely going to pick it up. I would read anything that this woman wrote because it is so good. So let's go on to the next one. Oh, and rating, definitely 5 stars. I loved it. Everything about it. It was perfect. I have no complaints. The next book I read was, okay, so it's something I read on my Kindle, and I actually borrowed it off the Libby app. So this was my first time using it, and it was so cool. I loved using the Libby app. It was really easy. I know that it has like the wait lists and stuff like that, but for less popular books, you got them so quickly. So I read A Discovery of Witches on my Kindle, and it was like mid. It wasn't bad. It wasn't like fantastic, but I did like it. I loved the like time period kind of. So it's like not a timepiece, but at the same time like you're interacting with characters who are like they've lived hundreds and hundreds of years. So it's like you get to see like how they still have those little things from like the old times compared to like in modern. And it had really good like storylines about like I loved the main character. Her name's Diana, and she like goes through this like struggle of like not connecting with that she's a witch. So essentially it's like there's different factions of people, witches, vampires, and demons. I think that's all of them. And they like can't interact with each other essentially because they don't want to draw attention to themselves from like the humans. So it's kind of about like this girl who finds something that everyone is looking for. So now they're all kind of like after her, and she teams up with a vampire, and she like never connected with her witchiness, so she never trained herself or anything like that, and she never got training because she just didn't want it. She didn't want to be a witch. So it's kind of like her discovering that like her true identity and what she wants to do for herself, and like not letting other people kind of tell her what needs to be done, but also taking the advice of other people. So I did like it. It took me a while to read because typically if I'm reading on my Kindle, I'm reading like a physical book too. So that one's kind of like on the back burner. But it was good. It's adult, so it's an adult fiction. And I don't know, I'm still like kind of in my YA thing, so I prefer the YA books a lot of the times. But I did like it. I would totally give it like 3 stars. I tried watching the TV show too, and there is a TV show. It's pretty good actually. It like follows it like almost to a T, other than like it leaves out little details. There was some stuff it did leave out that I was like, okay, I really wanted to see that, but you know, they have to do that with TVs. So let's go on to the next book. And the next book I read was Gallant by V.E. Schwab, and this one's so shiny. So this is I think it's the Bookish Box. The Bookish Box edition. I loved this edition when I got it, but after reading it, it was just kind of weird, and it's really smudgy now. Like, it's like covered in my fingerprints. It's still pretty, but it's very smudgy. This was I think only my second book by V.E. Schwab that I've read. So I read, The Immortal Life. Immortal or Invisible? The Invisible Life. I always mix that up. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And I loved that book. It was a 5 stars for me. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I had like really high hopes because I liked her writing style. And this book was kind of confusing to me. And I didn't really enjoy it. It kind of felt like there was like a story, but like it never really went anywhere. Like it wasn't, you couldn't like look at this book and be like, okay, here's the like beginning, middle, and end. It all kind of just felt like this weird mush. So it was like nothing like stuck out. Like it didn't want to like keep me reading. Like there wasn't anything in there where it was like, oh, I need to figure out what's going on or what's happening next. I did like the visuals, so it has like these really pretty, I don't know if this is exclusive to Bookish Box or not, but it has this pretty artwork, so I did really enjoy seeing that because it's like part of the book, so you like figure out like what those drawings are. And essentially it's just like this girl is an orphan and she's going back to like a family member essentially finds her. And she's going back to live with them in a house called Gallant. And that's pretty much the gist. Honestly, that's what I'm saying. Like, I couldn't even tell you the, like, majority of this book without ruining it because of the fact that, like, I was so, not confused, but, like, kind of lost. Like, I didn't really know what was going on. And there was certain stuff that I enjoyed. Like, there was, like, these little, like, secrets. Like, there was, like, these things, and then you'd figure out what they meant later. But, like, yeah, I don't know. I wasn't a giant fan of it. I still want to read more of her books because I've heard awesome things about a lot of her other ones, and I know a lot of people really loved this book. It just wasn't my cup of tea. It didn't really have, like, a structured plot like I was looking for. So, I'm sorry, Gallant. But it's 2 stars for Gallant. Hopefully I enjoy her other books, which I'm sure I will because I loved The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So, let's get on to the next one, where I did a random jump. I went like, okay, I'm getting back into fantasy, and then I read that book, and I was like, I did not enjoy that, so maybe I'm not ready yet. So I read another rom-com book, and I read Funny You Should Ask, which, honestly, I loved this book too. So my, like, romance rom-com books did really good this month. Usually I don't read this many. I'm mostly, like, I'll read one, maybe, and I'm more, like, heavily fantasy, but this one I really liked. So it's kind of about, like, a girl who wrote a paper, or not a paper, like an article for a magazine, and she wrote it on a famous person, and it flashes back and forth between her writing this article and, like, the experience she had writing it the first time to, like, her agency asked her to redo the article again, and it's like, I don't know, 15 years later or 20 years later or something like that. I can't even remember. And I think it says on here somewhere. But I love those types of, like, books, obviously, because I liked it and it ends with us. Where they flash back and forth. So it's like, and it flowed so good. So it'd be like, here's this part and it's flashing from this, and this is the past, and then it's going to go back into the future. And in the future, it, like, kind of flows. So it's, like, the same thing that happened in the past is, like, happening in the future, but, like, differently. And I really enjoyed that. I liked the characters a lot. And this was the same thing. It had good complexity. So it wasn't, like, just a simple rom-com or anything like that. It had, like, a lot of depth. So you got to see, like, characters have internal struggles. And I loved the main character. Like, her biggest struggle was that she felt like she didn't want to write these puff pieces on these, like, famous people and be, like, known for writing them. So it's like she felt defined, like her career was defined by this, like, one famous article she wrote, which was about the guy in the book. And she was, like, struggling with kind of, like, her career identity, essentially. And he was kind of doing the same thing. So he was, like, struggling with his career as an adult, and, like, it shows, like, where his, like, career kind of, like, the climax of where he started to struggle. So it has some good themes of, like, alcoholism, like, feeling lost. I really liked that. So, like, the girl, a lot of the times she references that she doesn't, like, nothing feels like home anywhere she is. It doesn't feel like home. Like, she doesn't feel like she belongs anywhere anymore. So I really liked that because I could kind of relate with that. Like, I moved right out of college to a different state, and it was during the pandemic. So I moved and I struggled with, I don't even know where things are, and you can't really meet people, and it was like, nothing felt like home. Like, your family home, like, where you grew up, didn't feel like home anymore, and, like, moving somewhere else didn't feel like home either. So I really enjoyed that aspect of this book. I think for anyone who is, like, feels like they're growing up and just kind of feels a little lost, I really liked this book, and I think that gave that. I honestly, at the very, very beginning, I didn't like it, and I thought I was not going to finish it. And then it reached a point where I was like, yeah, it started getting really good. And the main character is funny. Like, she's weird and funny, and she does these quirky things, and I just really liked her. So, 4 stars, because of the beginning, it couldn't catch me until it did. But I really like this book, and I recommend it. And it's by Elissa Sussman. I'm totally butchering that probably, but I'm sure you all have heard this because, you know, I'm pretty sure this, like, was on Book Talk for a hot minute, and it's usually on one of the tables at Barnes & Noble, so I recommend. And now, okay, so the next book I actually read was another Libby book, and so I read it on my Kindle again, and it was Verity by Colleen Hoover. It's so funny that I was like, oh, do you recommend any of other Colleen Hoover's books? And I didn't even think about how I totally read Verity, which was like another one of her books. So I'm like blabbing and blabbing about Colleen Hoover. But I really liked the book. So it was kind of like a psychological thriller about a woman who was co-writing a book for someone, essentially. So she's like going in and writing, and she has to like go into this person's house, and she lives there, and just a lot of creepy things happen. And you're kind of like, so the person she's writing the book for, she like finds in their office this manuscript, which is like, it's kind of like a memoir that the original author wrote. So you're like going back and forth between like the stuff that's happening to the main character versus like reading, her name is Verity's manuscript, so she was the original author. So it was kind of cool seeing the perspective of, even though, so Verity's, I think she's in a coma, not a coma, she's like, so I can't remember what was wrong with her, but she was essentially like brain dead almost, but she could like still function. And she like wrote this manuscript, so you get to like see stuff that she wrote about and like figure out her character even though she's not essentially there. So I did really like that. There was some stuff in it that I thought was kind of weird. It definitely kept me on my toes. The ending was insane. I would have never guessed the ending. I just didn't think, like, it all, like, happened so quickly, too. Like, the very last bit of the book, like, everything happened. So it was, like, it kind of builds you up the whole entire story, and at the very end, it's, like, slams you down. So I really liked the, like, structure of the book. I did enjoy that. It wasn't anything, like, I don't know, magical. I did really, really like it, but I'd probably give it, like, 3.5. It was a little bit better than, like, a mid-grade book. So I did like it, and I really liked the characters and kind of like the creepiness of it, too. So thanks, Colleen, for another good book. And again, if you have any other good recommendations, or if you think that, like, the rest of her collection just isn't up for it, let me know. The last and my favorite book that I read this month is The Once and Future Witches by Alix E. Harrow. Harrow? This book was magical. This was the best experience I've ever had reading a book, and it's honestly stunning. I want to, like, even just, like, show, you can't even tell, but it has this beautiful, like, texture, and it has, like, I know there's a word for this, but the pages are, like, uneven and, like, ripped, like, kind of like a vintage book. Like, it seems like they were, like, rough cut, which I really liked. And it was a full experience. Alix, when you wrote this book, I would have never guessed that you, like, lived in the modern age. When you read this, it honestly feels like you can hear their voices in your head, and you can hear, like, their accents, and you can hear the, like, time period. So this is about a group of sisters in the, it's like 1893, I think, and yeah, 1893, so it's the late 1800s, and they reunite with each other, and there's, like, this, like, witches and witching has been, like, lost, and they're kind of trying to, like, bring sisterhood back together. So they're trying to, like, bring power to women. This book has everything. It has diversity. There's such a diverse character set. Like, it has different ethnicities, different races, cultures, everything. And it shows you so many different dynamics of, like, the 1800s without, like, just being about witching. Like, it's not like these witches who can do everything. It's like these witches who can do very little. But together, they're, like, trying to make a difference, and they're trying to bring it back, and they're trying to, like, get rights for themselves. Like, at the beginning, there's, like, a protest going on for the right to vote for women. So it's, like, not just about being a witch. It's about, like, kind of struggling to earn their rights in, like, the time where men were kind of the power and women had nothing. So I loved it. It also talked about, like, racism and, like, racial like segregation pretty much. It was so beautifully written, and honestly, like, this is one of my favorite books that I've read, especially this year. Like, it's just amazing. I don't even know how to praise this book anymore, but it has everything that you could possibly want, and it has beautiful like themes and stories in all three sisters. So each one struggles with their own individual like thing, and you get to see them each individually go through that struggle and kind of like figure it out. And at the end, they kind of like get some closure or a like completion. Like, so it's like one of them has no confidence, and one of them struggles with letting people get close to her. And my favorite, Juniper, she was just angry. She was full of hatred, and she was so angry. She's like a spitfire. She is just angry at the world, and she kind of wants to just destroy everything. She wants to tear everything down. She wants to burn it to the ground. And like, you kind of see her struggle with that, where she wants like something to happen, but she struggles with like getting like an actual result and just like destroying everything. So I loved her so much, and I thought she was absolutely amazing, and it's a really good book, and 100% please read this. I would give it like 10 stars out of 5 because it's great. I recommend. So that is all of the books that I read this month. Or well, I guess last month, because it's September now. I am also reading Lightlark, so I read maybe like the first couple chapters in September or August, so that kind of counts. So I'm excited to see what September has for reading and what kind of books I can get into. If you guys have any recommendations for what you're reading this month, or anything that you think I should throw on my TBR for September, let me know down in the comments. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye!